All right. Well, hello. Good morning, everybody. Um, Welcome to the Employability Skill Series, where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover a different topic with thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, Associate Director of Business Careers. I have Nicci Hops, Assistant Director of Campus Development for Northwestern Mutual, as my guest. And today we will be discussing the importance of professional branding in the workplace. Nicci's been with Northwestern Mutual for almost 2 years, and prior to her current role, she worked in college athletics for 7 years, helping student athletes prepare for life after sport. Good morning, Nicci. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning. Yes, of course, I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, students that are here, if you want your attendance counted, you can scan the QR code on the screen. I also put the link in the chat pod if you're on your phone. All right, so Nicci, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right into professional branding.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nicci. I am currently working with Northwestern Mutual as Assistant Director for Campus Development. So my job is to do both recruiting and then I work on the development side with our interns. So making sure that they are getting the most out of their experience from a professional development standpoint, skill development standpoint. Like you said, prior to this, I worked in athletics. So I did a lot of work with student athletes on preparing them for life after sport. So a majority of my career has been really focused on helping college students prepare for entering the workplace, and then currently helping them get the most out of their time as interns in the workplace. I'm from the Tampa area. I actually went to school in Polk County at Southeastern. So very familiar with the area with Florida Southern, spent a lot of time on campus. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's excellent. We have you on campus quite a bit. You come and you do presentations in my class. I know we've had you set up and do tabling sometimes in the lobby of Becker. You guys do the
Mhm.
mock interviews, the mocktails. You guys
Mhm.
even have a room over in career services named after you guys. So yeah,
Yeah.
very heavily involved in our campus, and we love it.
Yeah, it's good to be there. I really enjoy spending time on campus for sure.
Well, we love having you. And so
Thank you.
you do this presentation in the classroom. So when we talk about professional branding, what exactly like is that, and like why is this important?
Yeah, when I think about even training our interns, one of the first things we talk about before we even talk about the company and the job and what their experience is going to be like, on orientation day, we dedicate an hour to go over professionalism. And I think a lot of times people might think about that as just dress or just showing up on time, but there's a lot of different aspects to professionalism that are going to impact your brand and how you carry yourself. And so it's highly important. It's highly important in terms of how you navigate yourself in any sort of work environment you enter into, any sort of networking environment you enter into, um, because you're your brand, right? And that's something that we make very clear. It's also important to understand that if you decide to join a company, if you decided, even for students that go to Florida Southern, you're representing everybody that's attached to you, right? When you think about athletes or you think about celebrities who are seen in the news or have an article that's attached to them, it's never just about them. It's about their significant other or their children or their family or their friends or the people attached to them. So I think this topic is highly important when you think about not only your personal brand and how you navigate yourself, but then how that carries into the workplace and that impacts you in terms of how you develop in your position and even how you move up in your career.
Yeah, I like that you say that. It's really important to for them to understand that. And I know I touch on this in class too, but when they're going to hire you, an employer goes to hire you, you are going to be representing that company at all times, not just, when you're wearing the polo or when you're at work or you're at a work function. You need to have one story to tell. That was something that my last guest last semester, when he talked about this, we did that. He's like, have one story to tell. Don't be one person on social media and a completely different person, on your LinkedIn or at work or yeah, I know that we kind of change the stuff that we talk about or even the way that we kind of talk depending on like the situation we're in. But you should always live your life with integrity. And another thing I always tell my students and also my own children like, live your life as if, people are watching. If somebody were to peek in on you, would you be embarrassed about what you were saying or doing? And I think that goes along with having just that one story to tell.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so important. That's such a good point because and especially the day and age that we live in, there are companies that are paid to pull social media reports.
Mhm.
And that is the reality, very rarely nowadays do you get hired or do you get considered for a job without somebody looking further than your resume. And that's so true. You don't think about that. That consistency is so important, especially when you think about working for bigger companies who that's really important to them, how you decide to carry yourself, whether they're inviting you to a conference or a meeting or in any sort of environment. That's a really good point. You've got to be consistent. You've got to do what you say and
Yeah.
walk the talk for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Yovan admitted that he looked at my social media before my interview with them. And it's funny because it's like if you ever looked on my social media, the only thing you'll ever see are my home improvement projects or silly things with my kids. I'm kind of
Yeah.
boring.
No, hey, that's good though. People want to see that,
Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, I also like the you just touched on too. You said, when people think about professionalism, it's not just your dress.
Mhm,
It absolutely is your body language. It is your facial expressions. It is how you carry yourself. And so
mhm,
confidence is like the number one, skill that you can master to, feel good about what you're saying and what you're doing. And that comes with how you carry yourself. So can you talk a
mhm.
little bit about that? Like, especially like when you're in interviews, when you talk about like body language and facial expressions, like how does that impact your opinion on the person you're interviewing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, it's become really big, and I think it's a little different. That's so important in our job. So what I have to look for somebody that's going to enter into a role as a financial advisor, this is a job that takes a level of courage and confidence. And so for me, more so than what's on your resume, more so than what jobs you've had, that engagement in an interview, how you carry yourself, how you answer your questions, it's what I would call when in our presentations attraction power, right? Um, I think that you can set yourself apart as a candidate outside of just your experience, just alone and how you hold yourself, how you engage, how you answer questions. And a lot of times what I find is students are very meek when they answer questions or when they present themselves in an interview. And I think they undersell themselves, whether it's transferable skills, whether it's how they answer questions. And that's something that I always will stop and tell them. I say, I'll ask about previous job experience and they'll immediately say what they don't have. Well, I don't have anything in finance. I'm like, don't say what you don't have. Say what you do have. I was talking to somebody who was like, yeah, and, I'm a mentor for somebody at UCF, and she was telling me how she doesn't feel like she's got a leg to stand on in interviews because she graduated with her AA out of high school and she doesn't have any group work experience. I said, you graduated with your AA out of high school. So next time you go into an interview, I don't want you to tell them I don't have any group work experience. I just haven't gotten there yet. I want you to tell them I graduated with my AA out of high school, so I am still working into group projects, but I was able to tackle a heavy workload and learn how to balance, both my normal classes, but then take AP classes so I could get my AA and graduate early, right? It's all in how you present yourself.
I like that.
And I think that is a game changer. And it could just be having somebody look at your resume and look at your blind spots, but how you present what's on that paper matters. It's how you tell your story, and nobody's going to tell it better than yourself. You could go into an interview at a disadvantage, but it's all about engagement, exuding confidence, presenting yourself as why you're qualified for that job, regardless of what's on that paper. And you can really set yourself apart based off of how you choose to communicate, the experience you do have, and why you're qualified for a job.
That's excellent. Yeah, because it is that's that confidence piece, be confident in the skills that you do have. Because I run into that too when I work with students. They'll say, oh, well, I just waited tables or I just babysat. And I'm like, what do you mean you just waited tables?
Mhm.
You just babysat.
100%.
Yeah, like especially babysitting. As a mother myself, I didn't have a whole lot of babysitters. The few that I did, they gained my trust. I mean, they were taking care of my children. They were
Yeah.
in my home when I wasn't there, and I didn't have cameras or anything like that. I was relying on the fact that they were going to keep my children alive and that they weren't, going to go through my stuff or steal from me or anything like that. That takes a lot of trust and, capitalize that on that, especially waiting tables. Oh my gosh, if you've ever waited tables or worked in the food industry, people can be, you've got
Yeah.
conflict resolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And college students don't necessarily think about it that way. They don't think about jobs like what you just said, babysitting, and how that comes with a level of trust. Or you think about food service, hospitality, even retail. Those are all going to provide me with the knowledge of, okay, if they've held a job or they've been promoted into a manager role, that means they've been trusted. That means that they've got time management. They show up, they're disciplined, they're reliable. That matters so much, in when it comes to evaluating a candidate. And so I'll take somebody all day long who, has worked consistently at, a restaurant for the past 2 years and has been promoted, but has that experience, but might not have finance experience. That's just something that I can count on. And so that's really important, and how students choose to evaluate that and communicate that those transferable skills are really what's going to allow them to set themselves apart.
Excellent. I kind of want to come back to that in a minute, like if they don't have work experience in their resume, but I want to kind of wrap this part up. Let's talk about like body language.
Mhm.
Sometimes, and I tell them too, I'm like, employers are going to expect that you're going to be nervous. You are young, you are starting out, someone like me, or maybe even like you, I know you're much younger than me, but like, I mean, I've been on several interviews, I've been in the workforce for about 25 years. So, but I still get a little bit nervous, but the body language says a lot. So like, can you like maybe touch on like some things that maybe you've seen people do that are a turn off, or maybe things that they could do that would exude more confidence in an interview?
Yeah. So I do all my interviews via Zoom. I think that's a really big thing for me to mention to start, because when I'm giving advice, I live in the Zoom world. And I think one of the biggest things that is really hard for me to recover from and to truly give that student a fair chance is how they answer that call initially, how they get on the Zoom. So, um, where are they sitting? How did they get on the Zoom? Are they making eye contact? Are they on their phone? Are they in their car? What environment are they in? And immediately I can tell if they're engaged. So if they're in an environment where they're distracted, that's the worst thing you can do. Taking an interview in an area that you're distracted is the worst thing you can do, because if you are looking around everywhere but my eyes, it's immediately going to question to me whether or not you're interested. So I think eye contact's the biggest, and that's the hard part. Is we do a lot of stuff Zoom now, and to be honest, a lot of these students are having to do pre-recorded interviews through AI, through like a system. And so what do you do there? You stay engaged, you make eye contact. Um, you make sure that you are, leaning forward, you're nodding your head, you are following along with the person that's talking to you, indicating that you are actively listening and showing that you are involved in the conversation. I think those are the big game changers, because you really have to be focused and engaged when you're living in that virtual world. So for me, those are the biggest errors I see. And to be honest, I even hear that from my leadership team when they interview people. They'll tell me, I just had this conversation yesterday with one of our leaders in the Lakeland office. Actually, he was telling me, and he was an interview he was on. He was really uncertain about the candidate. He said he was in some sort of environment where somebody would walk by and he would look at them, or somebody would say, "Hey," and he would, you could only see him from his eyes up, and that's a huge difference. And so my advice when it comes to body language from a virtual standpoint is engagement, focus, nodding your head, making eye contact. In person, I would say the exact same thing. You need to be engaged. You need to put yourself out there, in terms of making sure that you're not on your phone. Phones are down, distractions are away. Take notes. Show that you are engaged and listening. Bring something. Don't ever go to an interview without bringing a notebook. Whether or not you're writing down something that matters, that shows that you care, that you've done your research. So I think those are the biggest pieces in terms of making sure that you just show that you care and that you take this opportunity seriously. As a recruiter, there's no worse feeling than feeling like you're just wasting your time and the person doesn't even want to be on the interview. At that point, I'll just end it in 5 minutes. If you don't show that you care, then why am I wasting my time on the interview? So that I think that's the biggest mistake that a student could make.
I like that you're saying this because it's exactly what I say. So you're reiterating the same points. And I think it's helpful for students to hear the same message from different, entities, somebody who's out there actively recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and then of course the instructor who's, kind of laying the groundwork for that. So
Yeah.
that's really great. I say the same thing, take notes when you do your research. Write your notes down for the questions that you want to have, the questions that you want to ask them. But this also helps to go back because you are going to be nervous. And when you're
Mhm.
nervous, sometimes things leave your brain. So you have your notes, you can look at them, you can reference them. I always tell students like the first thing after you do your, introductions and your pleasantries and before the interview gets started, always say, first of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. And then also, hey, do you mind if I take notes while we
Mhm.
talk? Just that going back what you're saying, that shows interest, that shows that you really do want this opportunity and that you are grateful to have the opportunity. And then to take the notes, write the stuff down, jot the things down, pay attention, like you said, stay engaged and focused. Because there's the kind of that I told the story. I was helping interview the RAs for next year, and I don't know if the young man zoned out or he didn't really understand the question, but like we asked him a question that literally was like over here. And he kind of like skipped Maloo his brain way over here. And he was talking about something that was completely unrelated to the question that we had asked. And it was just
Mhm.
like, is what, and without trying
Right.
to make the young man feel bad. And we're just like, okay, we're trying to listen. But that you're more than I would say like ask for clarification. I wouldn't say more than twice. Would you agree? Like, 'cause that kind of shows that maybe you're just a little incompetent, but make sure if you're not focused, you could easily misunderstand the question and then you
Mhm.
end up answering and looking kind of foolish.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's actually a pretty common question I get when I'm on campus. So one, I have candidates ask me to reframe or repeat the question all the time, and that doesn't bother me if it's once. And two, you bring up a really good point. You've got to be ready for multifaceted questions. There's nothing worse. I'll ask a question. Tell me three of the greatest strengths that somebody would say that you have. If I get one, if I get two, I know it sounds silly, but if you ask for three, you want to provide three. One other question I get a lot of is, what if I don't know the answer and it stumps me? Is it bad to pause, and how long can I pause?
Mhm.
And I don't normally say I don't think it's bad to pause for a second. It shows that you are engaged enough that you want to think through before you answer. That's better than stumbling over your words and saying, I have had candidates say, "Let me take 1 second and think about that." Give them a couple seconds, and then they come back and answer. I think that's okay. I think pausing for too long might make the interview a little awkward. I know that's a tough balance to strike, but I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for the question to be repeated once, and then pausing for a very brief time if you need it. That shows that you're caring and interested. But like you said, if you ask for repeated questions multiple times, or if you're pausing for 90 seconds, that would probably make the interview a little bit more choppy and rough, and kind of question whether or not you're truly engaged in listening.
Yeah, that's a good point. I tell students to always have water with them because that's a good, just natural pause. You ask a question and you could be like, oh, okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
my
like that.
my little hack to if I need a couple extra seconds to think because no one's gonna say no, no, don't drink while you're don't drink that, but you're talking a little bit nervous, your mouth is a little bit dry. That is just a
Yep.
natural way to pause for a few seconds. I wouldn't do that after every question asked, of course, but if you do need a few seconds for sure. Um, Okay, great. So on Zoom, I like that you said that too. Be careful of your background. I blur mine, even though I'm just in my office. I mean, it'd be perfectly natural and normal to be doing a call in your office. But if you're
Mhm.
doing one, like say in your dorm, make sure you blur your background or have some type of effects if you've got all sorts of noise going on in the
Mhm.
background. That's really big. But I also like that you talked about distraction, because I say the same thing. Like, don't just have your phone on silent, have it on no vibrate either, because we all have that one friend that will send one thought per text, and that'll be the time that they're texting you, and you'll get like
Mhm.
20, bzz, 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 and
Yeah.
it can be very distracting for you and for the person interviewing you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. And, actually, what I've seen even more than that, and this might sound silly, is pets. I have had so many interviews where dogs are going crazy or cats are crawling up on laps. And, you're absolutely right. You've got to minimize all distractions. If you're in a dorm room and you've got a couple roommates, not a problem, but you've got to tell those people, hey, I'm going to be on an interview. Please, nobody knock on my door. Like you said, turn your phone completely on vibrate, or put it somewhere where it can't be heard if it vibrates. Remove any possible distractions. If there is a pet, that you need to take care of, I'm all about it. I'm a dog lover. I don't have a dog myself, but that can be very distracting to you and to the interviewer. Now I find myself having more grace because I get it, but I can't say that for every person who's interviewing. If
Yeah.
if we've stopped once or twice at this point because you've got a dog that's going crazy, or a cat that's wanting to be on your lap while you're interviewing. So, absolutely, you've got to find an environment. And I do have to pause and say this because as recruiters, we'll tell each other, worst interview story. So when that's what if then when that's most of what you do, you share a bond over, what's the worst you've seen. And for the sake of discretion, I'm not gonna share what it was, but there was one of my coworkers had done an interview, and what was in the background of this candidate's, room, I really hope that they just did not think through, or that they just forgot to remove it. And to this day, we still tell the story, and we obviously did not move this candidate forward. But you really have to pay attention to what's behind you and the setting that you're using, because it's not like we just didn't move them forward. We literally still tell the story, and then that's something where that's stuck with us, and not in a good way. So it might sound small, but it's very, very important to either blur your background or make sure that there is nothing behind you and it's just a wall.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm interested now. What was my brain's going?
I'll tell you next time I'm on campus.
Okay.
Just offline, I'll tell you.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to the resume real fast before we run out of time. You were talking about how, part-time jobs or jobs that they've held, that's very impressive. And then there's so many skills that we can pull out of a part-time job that you had during high school or summer job or something like that. But if, let's say, like, there are some candidates who literally have never had a job,
Mhm.
what kind of things should they be focusing on that they can highlight in their resume that will still show that they have some skills to lean on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one thing I'm really passionate about because this is exactly the situation a lot of my student athletes were in. Now I think it's a little different because at that point you're a student athlete, but I think the same thing rings true in that there are a lot of options. So, same thing with my international students, to be honest, that I worked with. But um, first and foremost, if you have not had a job and you are looking to showcase your resume, the very first thing you can do is get involved on campus, some sort of club. I would immediately put that on there, because it's one, it doesn't have to be a paid experience. So I would start with any community service you've done, any volunteering you've done, get creative, put that on there. Also, if you're a freshman, there's nothing wrong with leaving high school on there to start. The goal is that if you need to build a base resume coming in, you lean on what you've done, but then you want to identify your gaps. And even if it's not a job, where you identify your gaps is some sort of club on campus, some sort of involvement, community service or volunteering. Those two things could fill up your resume without ever touching a job within your first 2 years of school. And that would still be attractive to me because if you can tell me projects you've worked on or consistent attendance at a community event, something you're passionate about, campus involvement shows that you have initiative, shows that you're wanting to be a leader. Anything like that is ways that you can fill your resume. So my advice, is if you have a complete blank slate, I would say think back in your mind, think really, really hard about how you can get creative, whether it's leading a group project, whether it's some sort of organization that you've served for, something that you've done in high school. You've got to get creative. Because once you put your education on there, once you put your major, and then any skills, you've kind of got a middle gap to fill. And in my mind, that middle gap can be filled by a lot of different things. But you've got to really get creative. So that's what I would say. Focus on any sort of volunteering you've done, any sort of group projects. Go back to high school if you have to. And then my first step that I would recommend that student do is all you have to do to put on your resume is join the club. I don't need to know if you've been in it for a day or if you've been in it for 60 days, right? But the second you start doing things, you need to keep a running resume. You need to immediately update it and make sure that's active, and it's your resume is really meant to be a live document. So that would be my advice. I interview freshmen all the time, and it doesn't bother me to hear about what they did in high school. It doesn't bother me. That's okay. I understand that, but they've got to do a good job of telling me what they did. Were they on student government council? Were they in the National Honor Society? Were they doing some sort of volunteering consistently at some sort of organization? So that's kind of what I would say, the route I would take.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Demonstrating the skill, not just that you were on student government, but like, what did you do? I always tell them to focus on what value did you bring in that role with that company or that organization or that club. So yeah, thank you for reiterating that. Well, we're starting to wind down. So do you have any last minute kind of words of wisdom or advice for students who are looking to develop themselves, their professional, personal brand?
Yeah. I would say, I think my biggest piece of advice, to be honest, is it's never too early to start, and it takes a level of intentionality. So my first thing would say, don't fall into the trap of I'll worry about that when I graduate. I'll worry about that whenever the time comes. I will say this until I'm blue in the face and until somebody takes the opportunity away from me. You will never have another time where you have this many resources available to you and this many people that care. Take advantage, start now, take small steps, do your research. I mean, goodness gracious, we live in an age where you've got every ounce of information available to you. You've got AI, you've got, I can Google right now how to build my personal brand, and 20 articles pop up on places for me to start. So don't get overwhelmed. Start somewhere, start small, ask for help. And that would be my next thing I would say. I think that a mentorship relationship is undervalued. Ask for help. You've got to surround yourself by people who will help you, because nobody ever got to where they are by themselves. And if somebody tells you that, they're lying to you. Nobody has ever gotten to where they are by themselves. We all have people that we've leaned on. We've had people that have helped us. So start now, start wherever you can, wherever your feet are, and start identifying people that can support you along the way.
Excellent, excellent message. I love that. I reiterated that in class after you had left yesterday, that yes, this is the last time you will truly have this many people that just want to wrap them, arms around them and provide all this support and assistance. So definitely lean on that. So thank you again, Nicci. Thank you for coming yesterday as well. And thank you for being my guest. I've really appreciated your insight to all this, and students who are watching live or we're going to watch the recorded video. If you have any questions, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. All right. Everyone have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.